Day after day, we are surrounded by the presence of criminals. We are spectators to the deepest darkness in human actions and the bizarre reality that someone's suffering can be a form of pleasure. As dedicated investigators of the criminal world, we're on a mission to uncover the most shocking crimes and get inside the minds of those who commit them. I am Luke, and today I bring you another unreal true crime. The case of Agostina Jalabert. Agostina Jalabert was born on March 23, 1991, in the province of Buenos Aires, Argentina. She belonged to a well-known family and was the eldest of three daughters of the couple Carolina and Edgardo Jalabert, who served as the Secretary of Health of their city. Her uncle, Herman Jalabert, held the position of tourism minister and was a pre-candidate for deputy in the Rio Negro region. Consequently, the Jalabert family was widely recognized in their province and other regions of Argentina. Those who knew Agostina since her childhood consistently praised her outstanding qualities. She was described as a sensitive, sincere, and loving child who had a passion for dogs and excelled in design, crafts, and decoration. Helen, who shared her adolescence with Agostina, observed her creative talent from a very young age. Helen recalled that when they were in school together, each class was assigned a theme, and Agostina always took the lead in decorating the classroom entrance with her impressive drawings and giant models. While her classmates were cutting and pasting, they followed Agostina's lead because they knew she was steps ahead, creating incredible models. Agostina also had a strong interest in fashion. She even designed the graduation sweaters for her high school class. Those close to her affectionately called her Agos and described her as sociable and an excellent hostess. She loved dressing up, and during her teenage years, her friends often gathered in the garage of her house for pre-dance parties. She would try to introduce her different groups of friends to each other, always striving to connect people. Agostina enjoyed baking and cooking, and she was skilled at it. She had a keen sense of taste and excelled in many things. She had a curious nature, and when something piqued her interest, she pursued it. After completing her secondary education, she initially enrolled in architecture, but later abandoned it. During that time, she focused her energy on fashion design and studied it for a while, but she ultimately changed her direction. Nevertheless, she was a successful young woman who used her knowledge to chase her dreams. She even started her own clothing brand, worked as a model, and was building her career. At some point in her adult life, Agostina's path crossed with Juan Manuel Reverter, with whom she began a relationship that seemed to be going well. Little is known about Juan Manuel's life, and even the names of his parents have not been disclosed. Only a text from an acquaintance referred to them as Moni and Mauricio, and other family details remain unknown. The only accessible information about Juan Manuel is his LinkedIn profile, where he is promoted as a software engineer, a graduate of the National Technological University in Argentina, although his listed place of residence was Toronto and its surroundings in Canada. Interestingly, a search in the university did not reveal him as a graduate. Instead, a resolution from the university's Superior Council in 2017 stated that he had not passed two subjects during the periods of 2008 and 2009, which led to him losing his status as a regular student in the field of information systems engineering. Agostina and Juan Manuel's relationship began during the pandemic and was characterized by ups and downs. According to some of her family members, he exhibited psychological violence towards her and was controlling. However, the situation escalated in the summer of 2021, marked by more serious conflicts and violence perpetrated by Juan Manuel against Agostina. Her father shared that she was deeply affected by the relationship, but with the support of her family, she rebuilt her life and had no contact with him for a whole year. Around September 2022, Agostina decided to move to Mexico, specifically to the picturesque beach town of Playa del Carmen in the Riviera Maya, to further her modeling career. She rented an apartment, leaving behind her comfort zone in her native Argentina and putting a considerable distance between herself and Juan Manuel. In Mexico, Agostina lived by doing advertising appearances as a hostess and engaging in modeling activities. She aspired to travel the world while pursuing her modeling career. She loved Playa del Carmen and was genuinely happy there. She found work quickly and was thriving. She had many friendships and the support of a childhood friend who was also living in the area, so Agostina was not alone. Furthermore, she brought her dog with her for emotional support. Agostina's passion for travel was evident in her social media posts. Brazil, New Zealand, China, and European capitals like Madrid, Paris, London, and Brussels were some of the destinations that Agostina had the pleasure of visiting and sharing with her 16,000 followers on Instagram. One of her future plans was to move to Europe. Candela, Agostina's 21-year-old sister, had come to spend the summer in Playa del Carmen. She wanted to enjoy the beautiful Mexican beach area and be close to her older sister. The two decided to share the apartment where Agostina lived because it had 2 rooms, and they would be comfortable. At the end of December, Agostina's ex-boyfriend, Juan Manuel, reappeared. He came to visit her for the holidays. They reconciled, and he stayed to live with both girls. Candela would never have chosen to share an apartment with her sister's boyfriend, but things happened so quickly that before she realized it, the man was settled in Agostina's room. In her recent conversations with her family, Agostina admitted that they had decided to rekindle their relationship and announced that they planned to move to Spain. However, the peace in their relationship was always short-lived. On Thursday, February 16, there was a major argument because Agostina had discovered infidelity. The atmosphere in the apartment was extremely tense. On the afternoon of Friday, February 17, 2023, Candela left her sister alone with Juan Manuel. When she returned the next day at 7 in the morning, she tried to enter her sister's apartment, but the door was locked. She asked the building's doorman if there was any way to enter, and he informed her that screams and a fight had been heard in that apartment during the night. The police had been called twice due to the neighbors' complaints. Candela went back to the apartment and insisted on trying to get in. She entered the access code, but it didn't work. The door was locked from the inside, so she had to knock. After persisting several times, her sister's boyfriend finally got up and opened the door. Almost immediately, Juan Manuel asked Candela where Agostina was, and she criticized him, saying how could she know where her sister was if she had left the previous evening, leaving the couple alone. She insisted that he should know where Agostina was, but he replied that she was sleeping. While they argued, Agostina's small dog began barking, and Candela followed the sound to the bathroom of the apartment. There, she found Agostina with a bathrobe belt around her neck, tied to a hand towel holder that was only 4 feet high. Agostina's sister and her boyfriend untied her and brought her to the living room, where they attempted CPR, but Agostina was already dead. Candela then called the police, and the forensic experts examined the scene and took the body to the morgue, where an autopsy was performed, and she was immediately cremated. The case was initially classified as suicide, and it was considered closed. However, despite the decision of the Mexican justice system, the Jalabert family suspected that Agostina's death was actually a murder committed by her boyfriend, and they had their reasons. In late February, Edgardo sent a letter to the Foreign Ministry. The letter that reached the office of the Minister of Foreign Affairs requested action from the competent authorities in Mexico and explained that the family had experienced a situation of helplessness regarding their daughter's death. He detailed that the judicial procedure was riddled with shortcomings because none of the basic protocols were applied to investigate the real causes of her death. The boyfriend was not detained, his phone was not confiscated, and no toxicological tests were conducted. nor were any injuries checked. In addition to all this, the family had no access to the case. Despite efforts by the Argentine consul to obtain copies of the proceedings, he was unsuccessful. Meanwhile, Edgardo recalled that the foreign ministry had an obligation to investigate and punish violence against women and to guarantee the family's right to clarification regarding the circumstances surrounding Agostina's death. Regarding this ongoing case, the foreign ministry's action is of utmost importance because, given the conditions of the investigation in Mexico, Juan Manuel is free to act. Since Agostina's death was classified as suicide, her partner's legal situation is not compromised at the moment, which is why he is not considered a fugitive, but a person of interest for the family. However, it is essential to bear in mind that both Agostina and Juan Manuel are Argentine citizens, and the foreign ministry must ensure the rights of both individuals, even if it is proven that the man committed the crime of which the family of the deceased influencer accuses him. On her part, Carolina, Agostina's mother, embarked on a crusade in the media to seek justice and put pressure on Mexican investigators. She denounced the violent relationship between the victim and her partner. Carolina asserted that her daughter was killed by her boyfriend, and she mentioned in a televised interview that her daughter had been tortured, burned, abused, and beaten, including blows to the head, all prior to her death. She was convinced that he had staged the supposed hanging from a towel rack. Agostina was a tall girl, and she was dressed and ready to go out when Candela found her. According to Carolina, nobody who is contemplating suicide takes the time to get dressed up. She recalled that Juan Manuel had a history of violence. During a press conference shared on social media, it was revealed that the couple had been dealing with ongoing issues that had been kept a secret. She mentioned that the man had never inspired trust, and 2 years earlier, they had rescued Agostina from the apartment she shared with Juan Manuel after a physical assault on her part. She stated that if they hadn't gone to rescue her that day, her daughter would have lost her life at that moment. After that violent incident, Agostina chose not to report it, and her parents decided to respect her decision, although they believed it was best not to let such incidents go unreported to the authorities. The consequences of not taking action at that time were felt 2 years later in Mexico. According to her mother's account, on Friday, February 17, Agostina sent a message at 2:30 p.m., saying that she felt ugly and believed that she did not deserve a man who would hurt her. Carolina provided support from afar and encouraged her to leave the apartment. She reminded her that there was no need to be with that man. She advised her to kick him out of the house and not even get upset about a person who wasn't worth it. In her opinion, her daughter, by returning to that violent man, had played a risky card, and it ended badly, to her regret. The model's uncle, Herman, stated that Juan Manuel's parents had contacted the family and promised to cooperate. However, the dialogue ended when the man did not show up for a Zoom meeting where he was supposed to share his version of the events. Regarding this absence, Carolina said that he had remained in hiding but was likely listening and watching everything to stay informed about the case. In her view, he would have given his version if he had nothing to hide. Angry and frustrated, she said that Juan Manuel's parents were responsible for covering up what she considered a monster. On March 8, International Women's Day, there were marches in Mexico and Argentina, demanding justice for Agostina. This increased pressure on the Mexican prosecutor's office, which announced that it would investigate the death of the Argentine model as a possible femicide. This decision was based on the autopsy report, which showed signs of head and facial injuries, multiple lacerations on the body, and bruises consistent with sexual abuse. A forensic expert hired by the Jalabert family analyzed the official report and pointed out various signs of violence, such as punch marks on the mouth and a significant head injury. Additionally, the forensic expert noted lacerations in several parts of the body and internal and external hematomas, suggesting recent and non-consensual sexual activity. However, the only available evidence is this forensic report because, as mentioned earlier, The Mexican authorities proceeded to cremate Agostina's body shortly after classifying the case as suicide. Following the mobilizations on International Women's Day, the Mexican justice system announced that it had reclassified the case, originally labeled as suicide, and had begun investigating it as a possible femicide. The family's lawyer stated that the case had been referred to a special unit equipped to handle such cases. She further accused the main suspect, Juan Manuel, of attempting to stage a suicide and highlighted signs of violence at the scene. The apartment was locked from the inside. There were visible injuries on both the victim and her partner. A table leg was found out of place and on the floor, and 2 calls had been made to the police the previous night. She also criticized the judicial investigation, revealing that the crime scene had not been properly secured, contrary to protocol. It was essential for the scene and the victim's body to be preserved until the investigation concluded. She added that due to numerous errors, information that could have been obtained from the devices was lost since the perpetrator took the cell phones and all the data with him. The investigation into Agostina's violent death in Mexico promises to be a challenging journey for the family, which has been following the case from Argentina, more than 7,000 kilometers away, with a different legal system and culture. New statements were made by the prosecutor of the state of Quintana Roo on March 13, 2023, asserting that the Argentine model and influencer had taken her own life parishionment and scientifically. These declarations were made during a press conference held by the security cabinet of that Mexican province. The prosecutor detailed that there was a history of violence both before and during her relationship with her partner. He stated that it could not be ruled out that Juan Manuel might have induced her to take her own life, and that could be a matter of investigation. When questioned by journalists about the cigarette burns on the woman's body, he assured that these injuries occurred before her suicide. He explained that there had been violence the night before her death between her and her partner, and there was sufficient evidence of this. Regarding Juan Manuel, the prosecutor stated that he had been interviewed by the investigative police, and at that time, they did not have enough evidence for an arrest or any other legal action against him. However, this did not mean that he would not be pursued later if a connection to Agostina's death could be established. Edgardo, Agostina's father, insisted on the need to change the classification of the case, as their lawyer had found numerous pieces of evidence to classify it as femicide. When asked by an Argentine media about the prosecutor's statements, Herman, the victim's uncle, expressed that they were not surprised that the Attorney General was defending the suicide theory, because acknowledging that there were many elements suggesting femicide would mean admitting their failures. He believed that the prosecution had acted clumsily and hastily in the early stages of the investigation, leading to the loss of crucial evidence. However, as the case was transferred to the specialized unit, it indicated that something had gone wrong, as it is not common to replace a team that had performed well. He argued that the prosecutor was trying to defend the initial theory because going in a different direction would be an acknowledgement of their poor work. Gerardo Reynoso, a journalist, provided details of the judicial process. He explained that the Prosecutor General's office reclassified the death as femicide due to pressure from Agostina's family, the lawyer, and a feminist march on March 8. However, in the subsequent hours, the justice system announced that they were still considering the suicide theory. He highlighted that, in general, the prosecutor's office did not want to validate the independent expert opinion that it found injuries compatible with femicide. Recognizing this would mean accepting that someone outside the prosecutor's office had solved a problem they should have handled with a properly executed expert analysis. Regarding Juan Manuel's situation, he pointed out that the prosecutor's office would have to call the boyfriend to discuss the case. In the event of her suicide, he would inevitably be part of the investigation, at least in the statements that should have been taken to determine what had happened. To make matters worse, the journalist emphasized that the crime was discovered on a weekend, and during weekends in Mexico, intern trainees and junior investigators typically handle duties. This could have been the reason why everything was mishandled. He believed that their actions were not malicious, but rather due to a lack of experience, and this was reflected in how the case was handled. Some days later, in Argentina, news surfaced about a call received by Agostina's father. A couple of days after the Women's Day March, a prosecutor from Quintana Roo contacted Edgardo by telephone on the instruction of the state prosecutor office, who wanted to speak with the family. Before hearing from the father, the person on the phone, speaking on behalf of others whose identities were unclear, stated that the system wanted to apologize for what had happened. They emphasize that if Agostina's boyfriend bore any responsibility, they would certainly prosecute, as there was no intention within the prosecutor's office to cover up anything. They added that if any public servant from the prosecutor's office was found responsible, measures would be taken. He also quickly clarified that he would organize a meeting with the general prosecutor and a team of experts to show the father what they had. He stated that the general prosecutor had instructed that other state agencies in Mexico should also review the autopsy. Then the prosecutor, who had been speaking gently, abruptly shifted his tone and raised a complaint. He mentioned that it had been claimed that they did not follow the femicide protocol, and he argued that every death of a woman was worked on according to the femicide protocol. Edgardo also dropped the formality and transitioned from being a grieving father to one demanding justice for Agostina. After asking the prosecutor for his name, he directly addressed him as Carlos and firmly presented his point of view on the matter. He told him that if supposed experts found a young girl deceased in the situation she was in, hanging with a man inside the residence, and they didn't detain that man, didn't take his statement, and didn't seize his phone, then the investigation left much to be desired. He added that after reviewing the autopsy and witnessing what his daughter had endured, the conclusion for him was that everything had failed, a 100% failure, because his daughter had died. The latest information came at the end of March, just days before the one-month anniversary of Agostina's death. The hypotheses of suicide and femicide are still being pursued on separate tracks. Jalabert's lawyer said that the case had been transferred to the Women's Crimes Division, meaning Agostina's case is now on the femicide and gender violence table. She continued to work with the prosecutor handling the case and focused solely on demonstrating the femicide angle, providing more evidence, and investigating the boyfriend's involvement. She apologized for not being able to provide more details, but explained that all leads related to the murder were under seal. Regarding the question of when Juan Manuel could be arrested, the lawyer stated that it would depend on the conclusion of the investigation and that it was up to the prosecutor to determine if sufficient evidence had been provided or if more was needed. However, she reiterated her confidence in being able to prove everything. Neighbors reported hearing screams until around 2:30 in the morning. According to statements obtained after that time, silence prevailed at the scene. The time of death listed in the incomplete autopsy report is 4 a.m. While Agostina's family continues to demand justice, the alleged perpetrator is in an unknown location. Although the Mexican justice system has not issued an arrest warrant against him, and no judicial proceedings have been opened in Argentina because the alleged crime occurred in another country, he remains free. However, he has not made himself visible and has not faced the family of the girlfriend he supposedly loved and lived with until the day of her death. This case is still in development, but due to its preliminary stage, many proceedings are conducted discreetly and away from the media. The prosecutor's office investigating the alleged femicide issued a document to determine Reverter's whereabouts. The order was issued on June 7th by the Specialized Prosecutor's Office for the Investigation and Prosecution of Femicide to search for, locate, and request Reverter's presentation without depriving him of his freedom. As stated, the goal is to expand their interview to gather more information and comply with this authority's request. Well, that's all for today's case. As always, I appreciate your support for my work. If you subscribe, hit the like button and share this video. It will help me continue creating content. This was another episode of Unreal True Crime. See you soon. Every day we coexist with evil. We witness the darkest side of human behavior. The suffering caused by one individual to others is something inherent in our society. As dedicated investigators of the criminal world, we're on a mission to uncover the most shocking crimes and get inside the minds of those who commit them. I am Lucas, and today I bring you another unreal true crime. The case of Maria Fernanda Sanchez. Maria Fernanda Sanchez, also affectionately known as Mafi, was born in the late 1990s in the warm state of Querétaro, Mexico. She was the daughter of Javier Sanchez and Carolina Castaneda, who quickly realized that she would be a source of joy and vitality in their lives. Mafi stood out from an early age, exhibiting an extroverted personality that paired well with her passion for travel, allowing her to easily make new acquaintances. She also had a deep love for music, which added a charming touch to her character. Over time, Mafi discovered the magic of yoga, a discipline that she believed helped connect her with her inner self, bringing her peace that was visible in her appearance and her ever-present genuine smile. Her thirst for knowledge led her to seek out new experiences and embrace every opportunity to learn. Mafi was a diligent student, resulting in a strong academic foundation. She chose to study communication and digital media at the Instituto Tecnológico de Estudios Superiores Monterrey. Her resume was impressive, boasting certifications in video editing and special effects from the Academia Artes CIET, as well as digital marketing. From a young age, Mafi demonstrated ingenuity, an innate quality that she enhanced by pouring passion into anything that could elevate her creativity. These favorable conditions made it no surprise that she excelled in digital content creation, photography, and video editing. Mafi was the soul behind Mesh Productions, a small production house she created that reflected her passion for audiovisual production, visible through her social media presence. Her professional journey also included a role as a journalist at a magazine from 2018 to 2021, where she helped to increase the presence and prestige of her alma mater through social media content and contributed to educational note writing for Conecta. Between 2020 and 2022, Mafi interned in innovation and digital marketing at Kellogg's Company, also taking on a leadership role as the director of editing and production at Emporio Estudio, where she worked on projects for well-known companies. In February of 2023, the next chapter of her life brought her to Germany to pursue a master's degree in new media design at the European University of Applied Sciences. Ever enthusiastic to acquire new knowledge and meet new people, Mafi settled in a modest apartment in the Berlin district of Treptow-Köpenick, maintaining her sociable spirit and contagious joy. Despite feeling the impact of the distance from her homeland, she stayed connected with her family through phone and video calls, sharing her excitement about her new experiences and friendships. However, in July of 2023, a post in a group for Latinas in Germany on a well-known social network revealed a sign of vulnerability. Mafi was seeking a Spanish-speaking psychologist as she was going through a very difficult time. Like anyone away from home, although she had chosen to go abroad for personal growth, Mafi was also facing her own challenges. Despite new friendships and adventures in Germany, she began to feel a deep longing for her home, family, and culture. Mafi's life took a dark turn on Saturday, July 22, 2023. Although she had planned to attend the annual LGBTQ community celebration in Berlin, she decided at the last moment to stay in her apartment to work on an academic project. This wasn't out of character for her, as she had always been very responsible, especially when it came to her studies. Despite the allure of the celebration, she chose to fulfill her duties. Just before noon, Mafi spoke with her family in Mexico. The conversation was like any other day, but it turned out to be their last. After this seemingly normal interaction, Maffei left her room in the student residence in Treptow-Köpenick, disappearing without a trace. The following Sunday was unusually quiet from Maffei's end, which seemed strange to her family. They thought she might be busy or resting, but as the hours passed and she didn't respond to her family's regular calls, their worry increased. They tried to remain calm and ward off dark thoughts, but anxiety started to take over. Finally, on Monday, July 24, concern turned into action, and Maffei's family contacted the authorities at the student residences to request they check on her apartment to ensure everything was all right. The state in which they found Maffei's room turned into a perplexing mystery. First and foremost, Maffei was not there, and bizarrely, her cell phone was left on her bed, while the door to the inner courtyard was left open. These details were utterly enigmatic and led the residence administrators to alert the authorities, resulting in an immediate and extensive search. The European University of Applied Sciences, aware of the gravity of the situation, offered its support to the family and closely collaborated with the authorities in the search for Maffei. Through a statement, one of her teachers expressed the academic community's dismay at the student's disappearance and highlighted the coordinated efforts to find her. Concern peaked on July 25 when Maffei's parents, Javier and Carolina, traveled to Berlin, marking the start of an international search. The authorities issued a missing person notice, requesting any information that could shed light on her whereabouts. Although the police considered the possibility that Maffei might be facing emotional vulnerabilities, this theory was discredited by her friends and family, who emphasized that she had seemed happy and normal in the days leading up to her disappearance. Maffei's image, disseminated through a social media account created by her parents named Find Maffei Berlin, depicted a 24-year-old woman, approximately 1.53 meters tall, weighing 48 kilograms, with long brown hair and tattoos decorating her arms. 3 days into an intense mobilization led by Maffei's family, the Mexican embassy in Germany announced its full involvement in the case. A national search protocol was then implemented in a desperate attempt to find the young woman. The Mexican ambassador in Germany used his personal social media account to express his distress and urged empathy and generosity towards those who are far from their loved ones, striving to excel in an environment with a different language and customs than those of their childhood. On July 26, consular authorities announced the implementation of the protection protocol, known as Search for Nationals. This protocol involved coordination between the Mexican and German authorities, aiming to cross-check information from hospitals, schools, and even morgues, with testimonials, persons of interest, and security camera footage. However, nothing seemed to yield results. The search intensified on July 27, when the police began to explore canals and ponds in the region. Equipped with search dogs and divers, the search operations unfolded on multiple fronts, and civil society volunteer groups organized through social media to search for Maffei on streets and in public squares. They distributed flyers and pamphlets with Maffei's image and details, leaving notices in wooded areas and urban spaces alike. Meanwhile, a poster with Maffei's image was shared on social media and spread throughout Berlin, thus multiplying the efforts to find her. As the mobilized public continued their relentless search, additional snippets of information were shared online. According to those close to the young woman, Maffei's room appeared to have been rummaged through before the authorities' arrival. While the police did not confirm this detail, Maffei's father, Javier, shared in an interview that his daughter lived in a ground-floor apartment with a balcony facing the street, and the door to her apartment was inexplicably open. 5 days since Maffei left her apartment, despite the lack of concrete information, the family maintained their optimism and hope. Her father pointed out that they believed the young woman was still in Berlin, as they had not been informed by the authorities whether her passport was among her belongings. On the same day, the family issued a statement thanking Maffei's university and the organized civil society for their support. While they shared their gratitude, they underscored the importance of keeping certain aspects of the case confidential to avoid hindering the investigation. Javier revealed that his daughter had plans to move to Spain in the coming days to meet up with her boyfriend, a young man she had recently met and with whom she was starting a relationship. The boyfriend's solidarity was demonstrated by his travel from Spain to Berlin to contribute to the search for Mafi. Despite the efforts, on July 31, the Berlin police reported that they had still not obtained any relevant information that could reveal Mafi's whereabouts, who had now been missing for 9 days. Up to that point, the collected evidence had not shed light on her location, and uncertainty still prevailed. On the same day, Mexican president announced his intention to seek help from his German counterpart to collaborate in the search for Mafi. Days passed slowly as Mafi's family fought to bring visibility to the case of their missing daughter, participating in various interviews to shed light on the baffling situation. In a conversation with a renowned Mexican journalist, Javier, Maria Fernanda's father, shared the challenges they had encountered in the search. He explained that in Germany, due to personal data protection laws, cameras are not allowed to film public places, complicating the tracking of clues. He also revealed the small size of the missing persons department in Germany and how the detective in charge of the case in Berlin faced an overwhelming task. Regarding the Mexican authorities, Javier shared that they had received support and had been offered psychological assistance. The Mexican authorities referred to the case as atypical due to the time elapsed and the circumstances surrounding the disappearance. He added that the family was working on issuing a yellow notice through Interpol, hoping to extend the search beyond the borders of Germany and Mexico. Despite the many tears shed, he said they maintained strength and a positive attitude in their quest to find their daughter amid the difficulties and uncertainty surrounding the case. Desperation and uncertainty lingered as the days passed without news of Mafi. On August 3rd, following exhaustive searches and without encouraging results, Interpol issued a yellow notice for her location practically worldwide. Although authorities considered it unlikely that she had left Germany or the Shenzhen area, this measure reflected the determination to find her. On Friday, August 4th, a spokesperson for the Berlin police shared in an interview with local media that they had verified her possible whereabouts and were closely following up on the received information. However, the lack of details left everyone in suspense. While the Berlin police had gathered up to 120 clues about Mafi's disappearance, concrete evidence that could lead to her exact location remained elusive. Meanwhile, on Saturday, August 5th, the young woman's parents organized a solidarity event in front of the Mexican embassy in Berlin. About 200 young Berliners, dressed in white and carrying lit candles and messages of encouragement, gathered to keep the search alive and show their support for the family. In the midst of this emotional scene, the feared news arrived in the early afternoon. Mafi's lifeless body had been found floating in a canal in Berlin. The search for Maria Fernanda Sanchez had come to a tragic end. Heartbroken, her loved ones confirmed the tragic outcome. Despite the search efforts and the maintained hope, the reality was unrelenting. It was revealed that the student's body had been found by a person walking across a bridge. Although authorities had previously searched the area with divers, it was later explained that the canal was extensive and its waters had hidden the tragic secret. The community gathered in mourning and solidarity, but also to demand answers. The search took a dark turn as it entered a new phase, determining the circumstances surrounding the young woman's death. Meanwhile, the police stated that there was no suspicion of third-party involvement and reiterated that the investigation was ongoing. The Mexican ambassador in Germany shared that the next step in the case would be an autopsy of Mafi to shed light on the causes of her death. Although he assured that the body showed no signs of violence, caution was maintained until the autopsy was completed. In a statement issued by the Mexican Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Embassy of Mexico in Berlin, the Sanchez Castaneda family expressed their gratitude for the support received on both sides of the Atlantic. They especially thanked those who had volunteered for the search efforts and requested respect for their daughter's memory and privacy as they navigated the difficult circumstances of their loss. The painful chapter in the life of Maria Fernanda had come to an end. However, questions still lingered in the air. Pain and sadness spread throughout Mexico as news broke of the tragic end in the search for Mafi. Social media was filled with messages of comfort and wishes for eternal rest for her. Over 24,000 followers joined in a gesture of solidarity, while a feminist collective in Berlin and other volunteer groups also expressed their support with messages filled with love and strength. Politicians from various political streams in Mexico joined in the mourning, sending prayers, solidarity, and condolences to the parents, family, and friends of the young woman. The Secretary of Foreign Affairs in Mexico and current senator trusted that consular authorities would provide support to the family in this difficult time. The discovery of the body marked a new chapter in the investigation. It was known that the German authorities had received more than 120 leads about the young woman, and there were indications pointing to the days before her disappearance. But the situation remained secretive, and if there was any result from that part of the investigation, it is something that has not transpired. Although 2 weeks of intense search involved 500 people and covered more than 3,000 kilometers, there are still unanswered questions. According to Mexican media, the Mafi case brought to light a pending issue for the diplomatic representations of that country in Europe. Attention to mental health. The debate that opened highlighted that adapting to new cultural codes, discrimination, lack of support networks, and insecurity could deeply affect young people seeking a life abroad. The Mexican embassy in Germany reminded of the availability of a free window for access to mental health, while the Secretary of Foreign Affairs of Mexico offered tools a free psychological support platform for Mexicans in France and Monaco. A video shared by friends of Mafi, showing the young woman laughing and singing, reminded of her extroverted personality and all the vital energy that characterized her. That is why they asked for explanations to understand what really happened. On August 7th, 2 days after the discovery, Mafi's parents said that the Berlin police had not allowed them to identify their daughter's body. Sources close to the family confirmed that only the Berlin police had identified the 24-year-old young woman. The police statement reiterated that it could not be assumed that the young woman's death occurred due to the responsibility of third parties, but at the same time warned that the precise circumstances remained unclear. Media speculation was kept at bay, aware of the need to respect the official version. However, the police statement about Mafi's exceptional psychological situation and comments about her mental health raised suspicions about the true intention to investigate what happened to the last consequences. The how and why of her death were mysteries that tormented the Latin American community in Berlin. Attention was focused on the autopsy, a crucial step to dispel speculation. The most recent news occurred on August 9th and was published by a newspaper in Mexico, an informative medium that announced new delays in the autopsy. The newspaper managed to get answers from a spokesperson for the Berlin prosecutor's office, who announced that they would have to wait about 2 months to know the results of the autopsy, and that nothing is certain regarding the date of delivery of the body to the family. She pointed out that the autopsy had been ordered, but that it had not yet been carried out due to the workload and shortage of personnel. She added that it would take about 8 weeks before the result is available. Only from that moment can they think about releasing the body, but perhaps more investigations will be necessary before being able to deliver the remains to the family. The future of the investigation still does not seem to indicate immediate results. The repatriation of the body and the parents' decision on the final destination of Mafi depend on the results of the autopsy. The community cries out for clear answers and definitive closure, while the mystery surrounding the young student continues to weigh on the hearts of all those who followed her story with hope and much anguish. And well, that's it for today's case. As always, I appreciate your support for my work. If you subscribe, like, and share this video, it will help me continue creating content. This was another episode of Unreal True Crime. See you soon.